This is Tony from Historic Barbecue. Tonight we're cooking up some competition steak. So I've done a few steak competitions, probably not as many as some of those people's out there, but I've had pretty good success. And I've competed in pretty much all the sanctioning bodies, SCA, KCBS steak competition, and the ACSA. So in all those competitions, it's basically the same principle, but there's a few slight variations in the rules, but process-wise I'm going to do pretty much everything the same. So if you've never done one of these competitions, the way it works is you get two steaks to cook. They're always ribeyes, and then you go through, you randomly draw a number to decide who gets to pick first. It's kind of like a fantasy football snake draft. So if you pick the first steak in the first round, you get to pick the last steak on the last round. So this is a steak that I picked up at the store, Dorothy Lane Market, earlier in the week. This is actually a pretty thick steak. This is a little bit thicker than we normally get in competitions, so we're going to cook it just a tiny bit longer. But when I'm selecting the steaks, what I'm looking for is this fat, or the cap, the ribeye cap. It's always a ribeye at these competitions. So what I'm trying to get, this one's decent for a competition, probably wouldn't have been my first pick, but I'm looking at the marbling here. The marbling on this one's awesome. But I want the biggest cap that I can find with the smallest little fat nugget there. Depending on the sanctioning body, that's the piece they're going to take their sample from. And SCA, they're going to eat from there. And ACSA, they actually only eat from there. So if you have a small cap on there on the ACSA, they're only going to get a little piece of steak, so we want the biggest bite they can get. In KCBS, they eat the whole steak. So in KCBS, I'm looking at the entire steak. So that's our selection process. For trimming, on this one, there's really not a whole lot I'm going to have to do. So we've got this little tiny tail, is what I call it, down here at the end. So I'm going to take that off, and that's really just connected by fat. So I'm just kind of trimming that off. And this steak really is pretty good. There's no fat on the side. Just grab it. Just hold it. So I'm going to trim.
It died. That's why.
I'm going to trim all the fat off the cap on the top. So since that's where the judges are going to eat, I don't want them to get a big bite of fat. So I'm trying to take this off as little meat as possible, only getting the fat. So just kind of shaving that off with the sharp knife here. We're going to do that all the way around. You don't have to get every single speck, but just do the best you can. So sometimes on these steaks, it's pretty good, maybe a little bit right here. Sometimes there's going to be fat that goes all the way around and down the side to kind of connect this cap to the side. And I actually leave a little bit of that to help hold this together. We don't have this on this steak, so we're kind of risking this cap flipping open on us, but we'll see what happens when we cook it. So that's pretty much the trimming wise, that's all I'm going to do. I'm going to leave this down here, this fat, because it's kind of holding the cap together. And if this is any sanctioning body other than KCBS, they're not going to eat that part of the steak, so there's no reason to worry about it. Just like in the competition chicken, the entire time we're thinking about what is the judge going to look at, what's the judge going to eat. So we're thinking about that at every step of the way. When you're picking your steak, when you're trimming your steak, when you're cooking your steak. So now, for the shape, I'm just going to use some butcher's twine. Got my scissors here. Some people, they make this steak like almost perfectly round. I kind of try to leave it more like a ribeye shape because I want it to look like a ribeye in the box. So just wrapping it around. And I always put my knot opposite of the cap. That way, when I'm cooking it, I know exactly which end is which. Because once you season it and stuff, it gets a little trickier. So
Someone just asked if you tied yours, which is the...
Yep, so I tie it firm, but I try to make sure that that string doesn't leave a mark in the steak. So I'm just kind of shaping it. And as I'm shaping this, I'm trying to get this cap all on one side. So that when they cut that, they're going to get all that cap, because that's the best part of the steak. So firm, but no indentation is the goal here. If you go too tight, it's gonna see like how it's starting to push in on the sides. So I'm trying to avoid that.
It's like when you take your measurements and you want them to be smaller than they really are.
Exactly. So like I said, not opposite of the cap. And then I cut most of the extra string off. I leave a little in there just so I know where the knot's at. So that's my trim. And then I'm going to go through with scissors and just take off the whole edge around the top. So I just kind of hold it at about a 45-degree angle, just so there's no sharp edge around there. So it's more rounded. I'm going to do this on both sides. So
Have you noticed a difference in placing with steaks that have a tri-heart versus like the one you are cooking now?
So the last competition, I normally don't cook those. So on those,
what's a tri-heart? Maybe
so
tell people what that is.
I don't have this other steak doesn't have one either. So sometimes on these ribeyes, depends on which end. So these are cut from what you consider a prime rib. So you've got a big rib roast here. And one end of those is going to have the bigger cap. The other end's going to have a smaller, and kind of in between there's a piece that almost, you're going to have like 3 separate chunks of meat. The last competition I cooked had the 3 pieces like that. I try to avoid those just because I'm not really sure which part the judge is going to get. So I just avoid them because of the unknown.
A lot of questions that have come in. Why trim the edges?
So I'm just trying to make it a smooth appearance. So there's no little crispy bits or... this is a trick I do on competition briskets also. So it's just kind of something I've done in competition briskets and I've carried over to steak. And a lot of the things on steak I do because they've worked. If it actually has an impact or not, I don't know. But since it worked, I just keep doing it.
What kind of a boning knife is that?
This is a shun. So this is pretty firm, so it's not flexible, but it's really thin and it's super sharp. So I trim almost everything, all my meats with this at home. I don't take this on the trailer or at competitions because it's a pretty expensive knife and I don't want to damage it.
Would you ever put 2 strings, one upper and one lower?
I have not done that. I've seen that before. I like it right in the middle because if it's all the way at the top and all the way at the bottom, you risk it kind of popping off. There's some people that use skewers to hold it all together. I've never really had a problem with just the string. Like I said, that's what's worked for me. So I know a lot of people do crazier things, they'll jacquard it. My process is actually pretty simple. The only crazy thing is what I'm about to do right now, and that is, so I rub this whole steak in fish sauce. That's going to sound kind of weird, but there's a whole process. You obviously don't have a whole day or multiple days of a steak competition, but if you marinate a steak in fish sauce, it actually has a similar chemical reaction to if you're dry aging it, which makes it a little bit more beefy and more rich. I honestly don't know if that process is happening in such a short time, but I've done the first competition I did this method on, I won, and I've done it ever since then. So it's just one of those things that it worked, so I keep doing it. And I'm not putting a whole lot on here, so I'm just kind of, a few squirts on each side, and that's just getting the whole surface wet. So I trim this immediately after the selection process. So normally at a steak competition, meat selection is, the steak selection and cooks meeting is normally about 11 o'clock in the morning, and steak turn-ins are normally around 2. It's different for every competition, but that's kind of the rough idea. So I'm normally trimming this and getting this in. I put them each in a separate baggie to keep track of which is which, in the fish sauce as soon as I get it. So here's my 2 steaks. These are pretty even steaks. Normally you kind of have a favorite steak, and I like this one a little bit better just because the edge is a little cleaner, but overall these are pretty similar steaks. They're about the same size, got about the same amount of marbling in them. Well, this one might be a little bit more marbled, so I would probably call this my A steak, but I would be happy with either one of those. So, and then about an hour before turn-ins, or the window opens, I'm going to just dry these off.
Is the one such a different color because of the oxygenation?
Because it's been in the baggie and because it's been in the fish sauce. So, yes.
Sorry, professional people. The non-professionals might not know that.
No, that's a great question. So, we're about, at this point, 30 minutes out, 45 minutes out.
Smell the fish sauce.
Yeah, it's definitely got a distinct, it does not have a...
It's not that pleasant.
No, it's not, but it doesn't impart like a real fishy taste to the steak.
Not at all.
So, like I said, I'm not sure that that's even going to do it. This one wasn't marinated in, so I'm actually interested when we taste these tonight if I can tell the difference between the two. But like I said, I've done it and it works, so that's why I keep doing it. So now we're going to go into the seasoning process. At this point, I'm going to decide which side I want the judges to see. So on this steak, this has kind of got this weird little, I don't really like that piece of fat, so I want that one. If this one's going to get turned in, that's the side I want them to see. On this one, these edges are a little nicer, so I'd probably do it like that. So this is the side I want the judges to see, so that's the side that's actually going to go on the grill first. So we're going to season these. I'm going to keep track of which side that I want them to see. So first layer, accent or MSG. I'm going to put a decent coat of that on here. It's just garlic salt. This is a little coarser than I normally use, but it's what I had here at the house. Decent amount. Heavy coat of historic black. And then a light coat of historic red. Do we have any other questions that we missed during our trimming part there?
Nope. Just complimented on the camera lady's questions. The camera lady's going to have to take the phone out of this terrible device when we go to the grill because it died.
We figured out the gimbal yesterday. We had some setting adjustments and then
it died.
Apparently during our training we used all the batteries.
So now I'm holding it in basically an isometric bicep hold, which is not that comfortable. So, sacrifices.
So we're going to flip it over and do the exact same thing. So I am going to season the edges, but I'm going to season them very lightly because the judges are just going to get that part and they're basically going to get a little wedge. So they are going to get all that seasoning on the outside. So I think it's important to get flavor on that outside. I forgot the garlic salt because I was talking. But I think you got to be careful you don't over season those edges because you can kind of hit them with too much.
Right on, Rudy. Says secret ingredients: historic black and red. Thank you, Brent. Getting lots of support. The struggling camera woman this week. She's had a rough week.
I've been throwing her some curveballs, so
this has not been a.
So I'm actually just going to use I've got enough on my board here, so that those edges have seasoning on them, and I really only care about that edge they're going to eat. But
are you using grill grates for marks? Yes, you do, right?
Yes. So we're going to take
You'll
these
see
out
that part later.
and cook them here in just a second. And I do use grill grates. So I'm going to cook these on the Traeger Ranger. I turned that on about 45 minutes ago, all the way. Its max temp is 450, but I've got the lid cracked a little bit because of the grill grates. So the surface temp is a little higher than that. But let's take these out to the grill and I'll show you how that process goes.
Okay, there's going to be a camera flip here for one brief second.
Got it?
Got it.
Okay.
It's Tony's fault. Ah, so much better.
So we've got our Ranger here.
Have you ever used the injection method?
I've never injected a competition steak. To me, there's just something about injecting steak that just seems weird, but I think competition steak is turning into competition barbecue in some way, so.
And how long before turn-in do you season?
About half an hour to 45 minutes. So I got the grill grates on here. I'll spray these with some duck fat, spray, if it works. And actually only going to cook one of these at a time. So this is the steak that I picked as the A steak. And the side that I wanted to turn in, I'm going to put face down, about 70-degree angle on those grates. And then I've got this is a bacon press or a burger press. The timing might be a little off today since we're describing. So I just sprayed that same bacon fat or the duck fat on there. Just gonna set that right on top. And that's the Lodge bacon press or burger press. I'm not sure which one they call it. So we're gonna give that's a pretty thick steak. It's already been on there for a little bit, so I'm gonna check it in about 245.
How about jacquard?
I have never jacquarded it.
What is a jacquard?
So that's like meat tenderizer. So it's like a bunch of little needles that you just.
You have one of those. I've seen.
I have one of those. I've it's played with chicken using that, but I've never done it on steak. And it seemed to. I know a lot of people do that. There's a lot crazier methods to cooking steak. My method is a little bit simple, but it's worked for me, so I stick to it.
Do you measure the grate temp?
I don't. I just turn the Traeger all the way to its highest temperature. And I just, which is 450 on the Ranger, but like because my grill grates kind of hang over the edge here, that lid's open a little bit, so I know the grate temp is higher than what it's reading on there, just because of the way it's working. It's a little windy out here, so it might be cooler than normal, but this Ranger is awesome for. You do have to have power, which sometimes is a little tricky to get at a steak competition, but it's not been a problem so far. But it's super portable. Throw it in the back of the truck.
Someone's saying, why didn't I see the ACSA metal plaque, not plague, hanging in the dining room?
Because it got vetoed. It's in my office. The ACSA, I was the 2018 ACSA American Competitive Steak Association Team of the Year, and it's like a 5-foot round plaque. And I wanted to put it in the dining room. The dining room is currently a home office, so that got vetoed.
I heard something about baking soda or powder method, or was I being fed false info?
That's an interesting question. I've never done that. So if you put baking powder, not baking soda, on like wings, that makes the outside more crispy. So that would probably dry the outside a little bit and probably give you better grill marks, or at least a more dry surface on there.
Somebody asked about the grill. You talked about it earlier, but repeat it.
Yeah, so this is the Traeger Ranger. This is their portable version. For the people that never done it, if you've done a barbecue competition but never done a steak competition, it is way, way less setup, way less pressure. I did one up in Hartville, Ohio earlier this year, which is about a 3-hour drive for me. Their loading was at 8 o'clock. I didn't get there till like 8:45, so I'm like all worried that I'm not gonna have enough time to set up. By like 9:15, I was all set up and ready to go, because it's literally, I've got the grill, I've got this toolbox that I have like a knife and some seasoning in, and a table and an easy up. That's it.
And this thing's what, like 40 pounds maybe?
Yep, exactly. It was good. We're at 236 here, so I'm gonna go ahead and check this. Like I said, this one's a little thicker steak, so I'm kind of adjusting my time based on that thickness. So I need to get in there. So I'm going to use my little grill grate tool here, go under, lift that, and then I'm going to turn this 70 degrees the other way. So I'm trying to make diamonds on there, not squares. And then I'm going to move this over to a clean part of the grate. And then we're going to put our weight back on. My weight gets very hot, by the way, even though I have hot gloves on. So we're going to check that again in about another 2:45 or 3 minutes. So you might have noticed on there, we'll look at it once I open it next time, I've got a little foil pan on there, and that's got 1 stick of butter, 3 cloves of garlic, and a full sprig of rosemary. I just set that over on the side here. We'll show you that when I open it again the next time. I just put that on there when I'm preheating it. The butter melts, the flavor from the garlic and the rosemary gets into that butter, and we're going to brush that on there in the second part of this cook.
Would you do 2 minutes, then turn for another 2 minutes?
This time, normally I'm about 2.5 minutes. This steak's thicker, so I'm going to like 245 or 3. If you're on like a PK or charcoal and you got those grates at like 600 degrees, you're probably closer to that 2-minute mark than you are the 3-minute mark. And really, honestly, at this point, all we care about on this side is getting those perfect grill marks. This is the side the judges are going to see, and then once we flip it, we can adjust our time to get the right doneness. So in a perfect world, we're going to have identical cooking time on both sides. but we have the opportunity on the next side to take it off early or leave it on there a little bit extra because they're not going to see that other side. So you only need grill marks on one side. I have cooked a steak. The last steak I cooked was actually a little bit thicker than that in the competition, and I decided to reverse sear it at a competition. A little unconventional for the competition world, but it was too thick. I wasn't sure that I'd be able to get the grill marks I want at the doneness I wanted, so I reverse seared it. I put it on one of my Traegers until it hit about 110, and then I did this cook method at about a minute and a half aside just to get the grill marks. That was just because of the thickness of it. I was afraid I wouldn't be able to get it how I wanted it. And I ended up winning that competition, so it worked out pretty well. But normally they're about this size or a little thinner.
Do you preheat the weight?
I do not, because I don't really want it to cook that side of the steak. I'm just using that to get the grill marks. Got about another.
This is a good one. Rosemary, huh? So it's not grass?
It is not grass. There was
no fronds of any sort.
No, we've added a step to fix this problem. There was a competition in which a piece of that rosemary ended up on the steak, and there was a dispute whether that was grass or seasoning. Luckily, it was ruled a seasoning, so my steak was not disqualified, and I won that competition. So that would have been very unfortunate if they would have considered that grass. I keep looking at my watch. My battery died. We have lots of battery problems here today.
What's the IT for perfect doneness?
So I think so they want you to have a medium steak. There's our got pretty good diamonds there. That's exactly what I want. I don't like that fat mark, but that's okay. We're gonna try to make it so that's hot. Now we're talking about temperature. I'm gonna probe it at this point. This is the same probe that the ThermoWorks ThermoQ, and I'm gonna try to get this right in the middle because that's where those judges. So right now we're just below 90. So I'm going to watch this for another, turn it again in 3 minutes, but at that point, we're just watching for that temperature. So I think internal temperature in an SCA contest, I'm doing about 127, because you're going to get some cook through. They want medium. I think it actually scores better if it's a little under medium. At the KCBS competitions, a lot of times those judges at the KCBS steak competitions are cook teams that are cooking on Saturday. And those cooks are not going to give you any slack if that's undercooked. So I think the cooks are a little bit more critical on the doneness. So at a KCBS steak competition, I'm taking an extra 2 degrees, so like 129 or 130 before I pull it off and rest it. So you kind of gotta know your audience. So yeah, I probe that right in the middle of the steak because that's where the judges cut it. So once this is done and you turn it in, they're going to look at the grill marks. And then the procedure is a little different depending on which section body it is, but concept's the same. They're going to they're going to cut it right down the center, and they're going to look at the doneness. How pink is that meat? They've got a chart that shows you that a 9 this is what a medium looks like. This is what a medium rare, the medium well, and that's going to be an 8 or a 7. So I'm probing that right in the center where I'm anticipating they're going to cut it, so that I'm getting that temperature reading from where they're going to be looking at. Got another 30 seconds here before I'm going to rotate that.
What's it at now?
We're at 112. So this might actually be, this might not get the whole 3 minutes on the next turn, which is okay. So we got the grill marks on the top. We're good to go. So we've got our butter over there that you saw. When I pull this off to fix that rosemary problem, it's a little windy out here, so I had to pile everything up. To fix that rosemary problem, I'm just going to strain all that through just a little strainer you can use.
Have you ever tried pineapple juice for tenderizing?
I have not. That's the acid in pineapple juice is supposed to. I'm going to turn this real quick. We're at 122 already. It's cooking pretty quick. I'm not going to put that back on there. So I'm just going to turn it on.
Do you worry about probe holes?
That probe is so small, I do not. And again, I'm actually going to just wait a minute because this thing's almost done. The probe is so small. There's 126. I'm going to pull this. 127. So I'm actually going to leave the probe in it so I can watch it. Just going to put this in a pan and just loosely cover it. And then I can kind of watch that probe, and if I think it's going to get, if I start to get over like 135 or 136, I can pull that off and let it cool off. And that's moving pretty quick, so I'm going to vent that a little bit. So now I'm going to strain this. It's moving a lot quicker than I would have expected.
You didn't get to finish the pineapple question.
I have not tried it. Is the short answer.
Why rotate the bottom if the judges will not see it?
I don't want to get like a too strong of a grill mark where it's going to like burn. So I don't want them to get like a gritty piece. So we've got our butter here. It's plastic, so I'm not going to do that. That's hot, so I'm going to take that off. And I didn't bring a brush out. So normally I would brush this on the steak. We're just going to use our hands. This got all the way up to about 139, which is a little higher than I wanted, but that's okay. It still feels pretty good though. So I'm just going. Normally I would brush this on, and then I'm going to grab my scissors and cut the string off. And if we trim this right and the steak cooperates, it's going to stay in that same shape. Thought about separating there, but it held together.
It's
So
like whitewashing out here because the sun is so bright.
I can move it over this side.
Yeah. You've been whitewashed the whole time you've been talking.
It's okay. So that looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. If for some reason, if something happened with the steak, if it popped, that cap started to pop off, if the grill marks didn't look right, if there's a big piece of fat, I've got my second steak there that I can go to. So I'm going to let this rest for just a couple minutes before we cut it.
Rosemary, no thyme.
Rosemary only is what I put in there. I'm going to grab this piece of foil that's flat. It's clean, I promise. So I'm just going to loosely cover this since it was starting to... So while we're waiting for that, let's make our drink. It's a classy steak we got there, so we're going to make a fancy drink tonight. This is a bourbon sour. So.
All right, when competition is over, what happens to the rest of the steaks? 3 guesses who asked that, and the first 2 don't count.
The steak does not make it home, if that's the question.
It was also being hard on the camera lady earlier.
It's a tough crowd.
It is.
So we got 1 egg white. We're going to do, I'm actually going to measure this because it fits perfectly in our fancy glass here, if I measure it. We're going to do 2 ounces of bourbon.
That's better.
This steak smells good.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to do 1 ounce of lemon juice. My glass of ice inside is with the brush, but that's okay. 3/4 of an ounce. I'm using the Traeger smoked simple syrup. Any simple syrup will work. So you actually want to shake this dry first. No ice in there. And then you would chill it. But we're just going to skip the ice because it's inside. Make a small mess. It's okay. This is where you would add the ice to do it. But get your awesome foam there. And I ran out of Luxardo's cherries, otherwise there would be one of those on the bottom of that glass. But
We've got the syrup, though.
yeah, we might add that later. But that's your bourbon sour. Only a couple ingredients. Very delicious. I'm going to set this aside for the camera. I wanted to reward her on effort since I already had one.
Oh, I have both hands that are being consumed,
It'll
so...
be ready for you when you... So I'm going to put...
Here, the camera lady will just... I don't know, it's going to try to slurp it. I'll be waiting for
grab
me.
our steak and cut it and see what it looks like. So I would probably, if this was a competition, I would turn this steak in. I wouldn't mess with the second I wouldn't mess with the second steak because I'm happy with this one. Overall, it looks pretty good.
I need
Tiny
a straw. Yes, I do.
Tiny little bit of fat there that you might get dinged for, but I'm really happy with the grill marks on there, and it feels pretty good. Tenderness wise, might be a touch over, but I think we're going to be okay. So I'm going to cut this right about where the judges would, and hopefully we got that nice medium color, and I'm pretty happy with that. So might be a hair overdone, but I think overall that would probably score pretty well. Nice and juicy, and
Thanks, Aunt Mary. She says I deserve a drink.
The doneness is pretty good, so I'm happy with that steak. The one thing about a steak competition is you're turning in the whole steak uncut, so you have no idea what it looks like on the inside. So you just gotta take the judge's word for it on what they say. You can't really complain about the scores because you don't know what it's not like barbecue competition where you can taste the spare piece of chicken or the edge piece of the brisket or the piece of pork. You're turning in the whole thing. So
how do you place it in the box? Is it just a styrofoam box?
Yep, so it's a styrofoam box, no kale. There's a little metal disc at the bottom so it doesn't melt.
That's right.
That's a good. I'm glad you brought that up though. So I always box it. So they're.
That's not me. I think it was Ron.
Okay. Well, I'll still give you credit.
Okay.
I always box it with the cap towards the front of the box. That way when they take it out and they cut it, they're always going to serve that part that's facing the judges. And that just kind of guarantees that they're getting the best piece.
And out of competition land and into homeland, how would you plate that?
How would I plate that? If you check Instagram about 10 minutes.
Yep. Then you'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't. I like at home. I'm not going to trim it in a perfect circle like this, but I would cook it the same. I would either reverse sear it or cook it that same way, and I wouldn't cut it. I normally don't cut the steaks when I serve them, but otherwise I'd put it out with some potatoes or a nice wedge salad. I think is what we're having tonight. So yeah. Any other questions? That's my competition steak recipe. Pretty straightforward, not as complex as some of the stuff out there. Not doing any of the crazy marinades. Or the wind is getting us out of here. That's okay. Or the jacquard or the steaks. I just keep it simple, and that's what's worked for me. So hopefully that's helped you out. And if you have any other questions, let me know. I am going to do a digital copy of this recipe like I did last time. If you go to historicbarbecue.com/steak, put in your email address. I'll send that out probably on Sunday night like I did with the chicken. If you didn't get the chicken one, you can still sign up for that one too. But unless we have any other questions, I think I'm going to cook this other steak and we're going to eat. That it?
Yep.
Thanks for watching, guys. Stay historic and stay at home.